I review a lot of arcade and retro video game toys and gadgets here on GenXGrownUp. And without fail, on each one I'll get at least a comment or two asking, why would anyone spend money on these products when you could just emulate the game for free on your home computer or a Raspberry Pi? And I get it, it's a valid question and one that I'll try to answer in this video right after this.
If you're a Gen X grown-up, this YouTube channel is just the beginning. Go beyond gaming with a casual and humorous take on movies, music, TV, tech, pop culture, and more. Hear the weekly Gen X Grown-Up podcast anywhere you like to listen or visit genxgrownup.com/pod.
Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John and I am a Gen X Grown Up. Thank you for taking the time to check out this video. So why is it, when we have relatively easy access to ROM images for every game ever released, that anyone would choose to spend money on a new product to play those same games, or maybe even ports or variations of those games? Well, based on releases over the past few years, it seems there's plenty of market demand, which means plenty of consumers are speaking with their wallets. And keep in mind, I'm not trying to convince anyone who prefers emulation to change their mind and start spending their hard-earned cash, but rather to explore a few of the reasons someone would choose to buy a new toy rather than emulate. And as an aside, yes, I know these modern gadgets are also emulation, but for clarity, when I mention emulation in the context of this discussion, I'm talking about downloading and configuring emulators and ROMs yourself. DIY emulation versus emulation within a commercially available product. Okay, let's start with what is maybe the most obvious, and that's the attempt to replicate the original game experience. Emulation gives you the software, but retro game products also try to reproduce the tactile experience. Now, whether that's standing at a cabinet like those 3/4 scale arcade replicas, mimicking the controller of a classic console, or even just a mini version of the real thing with the cheap reproductions of the joystick and buttons, retro gaming toys recreate a little more of the experience that you might remember from your childhood than just the sights and sounds. Now, of course, the original hardware is best. But for the arcade, that means a big, expensive machine, and for consoles, that can often mean fiddling with decades-old hardware and getting it working with modern televisions. So for plenty of consumers, handheld gadgets and plug-and-plays get them just a little bit closer to what they remember. The next reason I'd like to put forth is probably closest to why I personally enjoy picking up and playing with these releases, re-releases, and re-releases each year. And that's that for me, I'm looking at more than just the game itself, but the evolution and iteration of the game and hardware being delivered. I can still remember getting my Pac-Man LCD watch as a kid, and while it was nowhere near the arcade Pac-Man, it was a playable interpretation of it. But I didn't stop buying Pac-Man there. I was excited to get a Coleco Pac-Man. Again, not arcade accurate, but fun in its own right. Then, when Pac-Man was released for the Atari VCS, it was on my Christmas list, and though it also took plenty of creative license, I played the heck out of it too. Over the years, I find it fascinating to see how my favorite games are repackaged and reinterpreted for new products. Did they use the original ROM? If not, how close did they get to it? Did they duplicate the controls faithfully? If not, how well do these controls work in comparison? Of course, I love playing classic games, but I'm equally interested in seeing how those games are treated and repurposed in new products through the years. If I were just emulating the game on my PC, I could play it, but I'd be missing out on tracking how that same title's treatment changes from product to product and release to release. Not everyone is interested in this facet of retro games, but if you are, it's another reason to stay abreast of these toys. The next likely explanation is the nostalgic experience beyond the game. There's a reason some people choose to go to the theater for an anniversary showing of Ghostbusters even though they could stream it at home. It's to try and invoke the intangibles around the movie that remind them of that summer of '84. The smell of the popcorn, the sticky floors, the giant screen. There's more to a classic movie than a reel of film, and there's more to the classic games than the ripped ROM. Opening up a newly released gadget with a game you enjoy inside might just spark that memory of tearing open a new game cartridge on the way home in the car after finally talking the rent into springing for it. Or it might remind you of that one birthday or Christmas when you tore open that giant box that you already knew by its shape was the game console you'd been dying for. Retail therapy is a real thing, and when it's combined with nostalgic endorphins, it can be a powerful reason to want to pick up that new gadget. And then I expect plenty of consumers aren't retro enthusiasts at all and may have only one or two games they even remember fondly. Seeing that colorful logo and a playable version of it on the shelf at their local retailer means they can own it. Even if they only play it once or twice and then put it on the shelf, it's a tangible representation of a thing they love and worth spending a few bucks on. Oh, and speaking of putting things on the shelf, that brings me to my next reason, collectability. Now, this is probably pretty self-explanatory, but for plenty of buyers, it's about more than which game is featured and how accurate it plays. It's that gotta catch 'em all Pokemon mentality that drives them. Anybody who collects anything can tell you that the never-ending quest to acquire new pieces and grow their collection is its own reward, even if every piece isn't something you technically need. Do I need another way to play Pac-Man? Absolutely not. Do I want to add the latest release to my Pac-Man collection? Yeah, I kind of do. And finally, there's the question of technical ability. Even if none of these psychological touchy-feely reasons I've covered so far apply and DIY emulation would be enough, the vast majority of potential customers for these gadgets have no technical aptitude to do it themselves. If you're a techie retro gaming hobbyist who has all the ROMs and emulators on all your devices, it's easy to forget that we're in the minority. If you walked up to 10 random people, handed them a free Raspberry Pi kit, and proceeded to explain how easy it is to configure and download emulators and ROMs, I bet you 90% will look at you as if you're speaking a foreign language. Some players just want to play the games and have no interest in learning the steps to do it themselves, no matter how easy we might assert it is. For them, these retro gaming gadgets deliver the instant gratification they desire without the need to immerse themselves into hobbyist territory. Some customers are grandparents who want a quick and easy way to share their favorite old games with their grandkids. Some customers are non-techies who need a shortcut to re-experience their favorite game. Some customers are collectors, or nostalgia seekers, or tech nerds, or any number of other types of people. There are a great many reasons why someone would choose to buy an arguably expensive and potentially inferior mass-marketed retro gaming toy rather than just emulate ROMs for free on a device they already own. I've covered a few here, but I'm sure there are plenty more, so please do sound off down in the comments with why you enjoy purchasing retro gaming toys and gadgets, or, on the flip side, the reasons you don't. There are no right answers, only opinions, and all are welcome. In the meantime, links to a couple recent reviews of the very products we've been talking about here and here. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.